Welcome back to my library where I get to share with y'all either what I'm reading now or what I've read. And this month I get to share with you one of my all-time favorite books. It's actually one of the first books I read when I got out of the hospital and actually started going to church again. And this book is, I guess to say, it's both eye-opening and it's encouraging if you are a Christian creative. And this book is, as you saw by the title, Roaring Lambs. And here's the book in case you wonder what it looks like. This is what it looks like, and I'll get a little bit closer for you. Well, you gotta work on that. It was written actually in 1993, and ironically, at that point in time, I had left the church and was not attending church and was drifting away from the faith. But this book is actually a kind of a manifesto for any Christian creative, whether you're a writer, an artist, a screenwriter, a poet, a journalist. I highly recommend The Roaring Lambs. The reason why, the whole point behind this book is how Christians can make a difference in the world through their creative skill sets. Now when I say in the world, I don't mean entertaining the church. That's one of the big takeaways of this book, is how Christians can be the salt and light to the world, not just encourage and entertain Christian families. But what you don't know about Bob Brenner's, back in the early days of television, he helped start televising the NFL games on TV. He was the big producer behind all that. But he was also a strong Christian. So he had a lot of connections within the Christian community, and he used those connections not to make himself famous, but to be an impact on the entertainment industry for God. And he impacted a lot of Christians in the entertainment industry. I'm not going to read to you an excerpt from the book, but I will read to you an excerpt from the foreword. Now this foreword is by Christian recorder artist Michael W. Smith. Bob Brenner was a good friend of mine, and I consider him one of my mentors. The philosophy of Roaring Lamb is one I have had of my own for a long time. I have tried to convey to people that we can live out our faith much more powerfully if we would talk less and live more. Imagine a world of world-class entertainers, tenors, movie directors, screenwriters, Broadway actors, journalists, and painters, all of whom have a passionate devotion to Christ. What's more, think of the people being recognized or respected in their professional worlds and in the broader culture, and the opportunities they would have to shout the good news of God's grace with the power of their lives. Now, in case you don't know, about the early 90s when this book came out was when Michael W. Smith was crossing over into the mainline music industry. I can still remember it was one of the most popular songs at the time, and it's still one of my favorite songs, Place in the World. If you haven't heard it, go on YouTube, look up Michael W. Smith, Place in this World. This is what this book encourages believers to do, to use their talents, their skill sets, their passions, their gifts, to not just work within Christian circles in the Christian community, but to actually go out and be the light in the darkness, to go to Hollywood and pierce the darkness and not become part of the darkness, as it's really easy to do. But again, and actually when this book of Readin came out in the 90s, it came with a CD, and there was a lot of Christian artists who recorded like just one track. I think at the time, the Newsboys had a song on there. There was a song on there by Sixpence None the Richer. There were a couple of other Christian groups. Even Christian director and jazz musician Steve Taylor, his old band had a song on there. So, unfortunately, I loaned my book with that CD out to somebody else after I finished reading it, which I've read this book 3 or 4 times, and I never got the CD back. But you can find the book itself on Amazon easily. Again, it's about 30 years old now, but I first read it the first time back around 97, 99. And this isn't just the only book. There's actually 3 books in the series. A few years ago, I ran into a Christian producer slash director and aspiring screenwriter at a Christian Writers Conference. And I didn't know it at the time, but there was a book that came after this that he told me about that the author of Roaring Lambs interviewed him for. And it's called, Lambs Amongst the Wolves. I'm going to give you a book review of this one later. And this one basically just continues the idea and the teachings and beliefs in the first book. And if you've watched the show When Calls the Heart, Brian Bird is actually interviewed in this book, and this book came back out in like 1995. And the whole charge behind this book is continuing to be the salt and light in the world, using our gifts and our passions to be excellent in our crafts for God, not for our glory. And since I've read this, I've learned there is yet another book in this series. And I have not read this one yet. I'm dying to read this. This is The Final Roar. And it actually came out after the author who wrote these books died. There he is, Bob Brenner. He looks like an old football player, if you ask me. Not that I'm a fan of football, but this book he wrote before he died, and it came out around 2000, 2001, and it's on my to-read list for this year. I'm dying to read it, and you know I'm going to be doing another book review over this. But if you haven't read any of these books, and if you're a Christian creative, get Roaring Lambs. You will not be disappointed. It will encourage you and it will inspire you and show you how we can, 1, be the salt and light in Hollywood. 2, it will encourage you to be the best. One of the big things behind Bob Brenner and even Brian Bird himself, they're passionate about Christians not just doing things in the entertainment community, but to be the best and pursue excellence in the craft. So that's one of the things that I am seeking to do. That's why I continue to study the craft of writing and screenwriting. So that's really all I want to share with you this month. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're having a great year. Add Roaring Lambs to your book list to read this year and enjoy it. And I'll share another book that I enjoy, another one of my favorite books, next month. And I'll go ahead and give you a little teaser. It won't be nonfiction. It will actually be one of the few fictional books that I have read that I really enjoyed. And it's actually by one of the top Christian authors of all time. And ironically, this book that I'm going to review for y'all next month is one of the most sought after books from that Hollywood has tried to purchase the rights to make into a movie. So I hope I piqued your curiosity. Come back next month and I'll let you know more about it. Bye bye.